The Shining, the photograph ending. The final shot of Stanley Kubrick's The Shining from 1980 shows Jack Torrance in a framed photograph from a July 4th ball at the Overlook Hotel in 1921, standing front and center among party guests despite having frozen to death in the hedge maze moments earlier. Jack's presence in a photograph taken decades before his lifetime confused audiences who expected straightforward horror resolution. The image appears after Jack's frozen corpse is discovered, suggesting something supernatural happened beyond simple death. Kubrick provides no dialogue explanation, no exposition dump, just the photograph hanging on the Overlook's wall, with Jack smiling among 1920s revelers. Two competing theories attempt to explain this image. The reincarnation theory suggests Jack is the reincarnation of a previous caretaker or guest who attended the ball in 1921, doomed to return to the hotel across lifetimes, forever trapped in its cycle of violence. The hotel absorption theory proposes that the Overlook consumes the souls of those who die within its walls, adding them to its collection of ghosts and retroactively inserting them into its history. The photograph represents Jack being absorbed into the hotel's eternal existence, becoming part of its past, present, and future simultaneously. Kubrick deliberately left the meaning ambiguous, remarking in interviews that he preferred audiences to debate the mystery rather than receive a tidy explanation. The photograph transforms Jack's death from simple defeat into something far more disturbing, suggesting the Overlook's power extends beyond time itself, that Jack was always part of the hotel, and that his family never had a chance of escape because he belonged there across all decades. The Witch, the forest levitation scene. Robert Eggers' The Witch from 2015 ends with Thomasin floating naked above a bonfire in the forest, surrounded by witches in ecstatic worship ascending into the night sky as the film cuts to black. This conclusion left audiences divided over whether the supernatural events were objective reality or Thomasin's psychological break after her family's destruction. Throughout the film, Eggers shows witches performing impossible acts, including flying and stealing babies, but always from perspectives that could be dreams, visions, or madness. The final scene provides no grounding perspective from a rational observer, no confirmation that what we're seeing is physically happening rather than Thomasin's imagination. The film's commitment to period-accurate Puritan beliefs complicates interpretation. Eggers researched actual 17th century New England witch trial documents, folklore, and religious texts, constructing a world where characters absolutely believe in witchcraft's reality. The family's paranoia and religious extremism aren't portrayed as ignorance, but as the genuine worldview of the era. When Thomasin joins the witch's Sabbath, Eggers presents it without irony or distance, treating her conversion as literal truth within the film's universe. Eggers has stated that the witches and supernatural are real within the story's world, though interpretations of Thomasin's final levitation, whether liberation, damnation, or both, are left to audiences and critics. The ending captures her transformation into what Puritans feared most, her ascent both terrifying and ecstatic, closing the film on an image that feels mythic and inevitable. It Follows, the pool plan ending. David Robert Mitchell's It Follows from 2014 concludes with Jay and Paul walking down a suburban street, holding hands, while a figure follows them at a distance, leaving audiences uncertain whether the curse was defeated or merely delayed. The film's climax shows the group attempting to kill the entity by luring it into a swimming pool and electrocuting it with appliances, a plan that appears to work when blood clouds the water. However, the final scene's distant follower suggests the entity survived or that killing it was always impossible. Mitchell provides no confirmation of success, no moment where characters definitively state they're safe, just the ambiguous image of two teenagers walking together with something following. The entity operates by sexually transmitted curse, appearing as different people to stalk its victims at walking speed, only visible to those cursed, killing anyone it reaches through violent, often sexual means. The curse passes backward to previous partners when the current victim dies, creating a chain of endangered people. Jay and Paul's hand-holding in the final scene, combined with earlier implications they had sex to share the curse, suggests they're protecting each other through mutual infection, keeping the entity confused about which target to pursue. The distant follower could be the entity, could be a random stranger, or could be deliberate ambiguity about whether safety is even possible. Mitchell has explained that he wanted the story to evoke anxiety and uncertainty surrounding intimacy and mortality, rather than deliver a literal STD allegory, leaving the ending unresolved to reflect how fear and consequence linger even when precautions are taken. Blair Witch Project, Mike Facing the Corner. Eduardo Sanchez and Daniel Myrick's The Blair Witch Project from 1999 ends with Heather descending into a derelict house's basement, finding Mike standing motionless in the corner before something attacks her, dropping the camera and ending the footage. This image confused viewers unfamiliar with the film's backstory about Rustin Parr, a 1940s serial killer who murdered children in that house. The mythology established through the film's fake documentary segments explains that Parr forced his child victims to stand in the corner while he killed another child behind them, ensuring they wouldn't see the murder but would hear everything. Mike standing in the corner indicates he's under supernatural compulsion, positioned exactly as Parr's victims were, setting up Heather's death. The witch's curse operates through psychological manipulation, echoing Parr's crimes rather than simply repeating them. Parr claimed the ghost of Ellie Kedward, the Blair Witch executed in 1785, commanded him to kill the children, making him a puppet of the same force now controlling Mike. The corner position serves multiple purposes in the mythology. It prevents witnesses from interfering, it creates psychological torture through helpless waiting, and it demonstrates the witch's control over victims' bodies and minds. Heather's final moments show her discovering that her friend has already been transformed into part of the witch's ritual, positioned as Parr's victims once were. The found footage format means we only see what the camera captures, cutting to black at the moment of Heather's death, leaving her fate technically unconfirmed but obvious. The ending's horror lies in its restraint. No visible monster, only the eerie recreation of a story that had already become legend. Hereditary, Pymon's successful summoning. Ari Aster's Hereditary from 2018 concludes with Peter Graham possessed by the demon Pymon, crowned as a new king by a cult in a treehouse shrine, surrounded by worshippers, including his mother's decapitated corpse. The ending reveals that every tragedy throughout the film was orchestrated by a cult led by Joan, engineering circumstances to transfer Pymon from Charlie's body into Peter's through elaborate ritual. Audiences struggled understanding why Charlie needed to die, why decapitation mattered specifically, and why Peter was the ultimate target when Pymon already inhabited Charlie. The cult's plan required Pymon to possess a male host to achieve full power, making Charlie's female body unsuitable, despite housing the demon since birth. Annie Graham's mother was the cult leader who manipulated her family across generations, secretly working to provide Pymon with an appropriate vessel. She placed Pymon and Charlie as a temporary host after Peter's original intended possession failed. Then the cult influenced the events leading to Charlie's death, positioning it as part of a greater ritual rather than mere coincidence. Joan befriended Annie deliberately, conducting seances that weakened barriers between the living and dead, making Annie's grief the tool to prepare Peter for inhabiting. The dollhouse foreshadowing throughout shows Annie's miniature recreations of family scenes, symbolically representing the family's lack of control, as if unseen hands were arranging their lives. Peter's final ascension shows him accepting Pymon's presence, surrounded by worshippers including headless corpses, representing the sacrifices required for the transfer. Aster has stated that the family's tragedy was designed by the cult from the beginning, turning their suffering into the deliberate fulfillment of an ancient summoning. The Mist, the mercy-killing timing. Frank Darabont's The Mist from 2007 ends with David Drayton shooting his son, his companions, and preparing to die himself after their vehicle runs out of gas, only to see military forces emerge from the mist moments later, clearing the creatures and revealing rescue was seconds away. This ending devastated audiences who watched David commit mercy killings based on the belief that death by bullet was preferable to death by monsters, only to discover he could have waited. The group included David's young son Billy, Dan Miller, Amanda Dumfries, and Irene Repler. 4 bullets in a revolver for 5 people, leaving David unable to kill himself after shooting the others. Thomas Jane's silent scream as military vehicles pass him captures the horror of realizing his choice was catastrophically premature. Darabont changed Stephen King's novella ending, which left David and company driving endlessly through the mist with uncertain fate, into this definitive tragedy. King's version offered ambiguous hope, suggesting they might find refuge somewhere, making survival possible if unlikely. Darabont wanted to punish the protagonist for losing faith, creating an ending where despair proves unjustified through the cruelest possible timing. The military's arrival proves the creatures were being fought, that organized resistance existed, that rescue was coming, information David couldn't have known when he made his decision. The film argues that surrendering to hopelessness has consequences, that choosing death over struggle can mean dying moments before salvation arrives. Darabont told interviewers he wanted an ending that would haunt viewers, that would make David's choice understandable, but tragic, showing how fear drives people to irreversible decisions. King himself praised Darabont's ending as superior to his own, calling it more brutal and affecting. The timing emphasizes that David's failure wasn't making the wrong choice, but making any choice at all when waiting might have saved everyone, making the horror less about monsters and more about human inability to endure uncertainty. Triangle, the time loop mechanics. Christopher Smith's Triangle from 2009 ends with Jess returning to the moment before her car accident, repeating her angry interaction with her son, and driving away to start the cycle again, trapped in eternal recursion. The film shows Jess boarding a yacht with friends, encountering a mysterious ocean liner called the Aeolus where masked figures hunt them, discovering that she is the masked figure from different loop iterations, and learning that everyone dies repeatedly while she alone retains partial memories across loops. The complexity confused audiences, who couldn't track which version of Jess was doing what, how many loops existed simultaneously, and why the cycle never broke. The mythology references Sisyphus, the Greek figure condemned to roll a boulder uphill eternally, with the Aeolus name meaning god of wind in Greek mythology. Jess causes her son's death through a car accident after losing patience with his repetitive behavior, and the loop represents her punishment or her desperate attempts to undo that moment. Each loop shows Jess trying different strategies to save everyone, killing previous versions of herself, leaving warnings, changing tactics, but the timeline always restores itself because the loop's purpose isn't escape, but eternal repetition of her failure. The film reveals multiple Jess corpses piled below deck on the Aeolus, showing countless loop iterations where she died, while the version we follow manages to return to land only to cause her son's death again. The seagull Jess obsessively kills because it's stuck in her car represents her own trapped condition, beating itself to death, trying to escape confinement, just as she beats herself to death, trying to escape the loop. Smith has compared the story to a Sisyphus myth, leaving it intentionally ambiguous whether redemption or release is possible, emphasizing Jess's guilt as the reason the cycle repeats. Donnie Darko, the Tangent Universe Collapse. Richard Kelly's Donnie Darko from 2001 ends with Donnie laughing in bed as a jet engine crashes through his bedroom, killing him, while other characters wake up with vague memories of events that no longer happened. The film's complex mythology about tangent universes, primary universes, artifacts, and living receivers confused audiences trying to understand whether Donnie's experiences were real, prophetic, or psychotic. Kelly released a director's cut with pages from The Philosophy of Time Travel by Roberta Sparrow providing additional explanation, but even this supplemental material left viewers debating the mechanics of what occurred. The explanation involves a tangent universe splitting from the primary universe on October 2, 1988, when a jet engine artifact appears without origin, falling from nowhere onto Donnie's house. Tangent universes are inherently unstable and collapse within weeks, destroying both universes unless the artifact returns to the primary universe through a portal. Donnie is chosen as the living receiver, gaining supernatural powers including super strength, mind control, and prophetic visions that let him manipulate events to create the conditions for the artifact's return. The manipulated living, including Gretchen Ross and Frank the Rabbit, are people Donnie must influence to complete his mission, with Frank appearing as a prophetic guide because he dies in the tangent universe but retains connection to Donnie across timelines. The film shows Donnie's October experiences in the tangent universe, learning about love through Gretchen, discovering time, travel philosophy from Grandma Death, and ultimately creating the circumstances where an airplane engine tears off a plane carrying his mother and sister, sending that engine back through time to the moment the tangent universe began. Donnie's sacrifice means staying in bed when the engine crashes, instead of sleepwalking to safety, as he did in the tangent timeline, accepting death to collapse the tangent universe and save both the primary universe and everyone he loves from the catastrophic destruction that would occur if the tangent universe continued existing. Kelly has said Donnie's laughter is meant to be ambiguous, possibly relief, acceptance, or recognition, leaving his exact understanding and emotion open to interpretation. The Thing, MacReady and Childs. John Carpenter's The Thing from 1982 ends with MacReady and Childs sitting in the snow outside the destroyed Antarctic research station, sharing a bottle while the camp burns, both uncertain whether the other is human or has been assimilated by the alien organism. The ambiguous conclusion frustrated audiences who wanted confirmation about which man, if either, was still human after the creature killed or replaced most of the crew. Carpenter deliberately provided no answer, leaving both men's status uncertain as they await death from exposure. Fans spent decades analyzing every detail of the final scene searching for evidence, creating elaborate theories about breath visibility, eye reflections, bottle sharing, and clothing continuity. Evidence supporting MacReady's humanity includes his consistent behavior throughout the film, his destroyed blood test proving he wasn't infected then, and his leadership in fighting the creature. However, time passes between the blood test and final scene, giving opportunity for assimilation. Evidence against Childs includes his suspicious absence during the climax, his claim about chasing Blair Thing outside when no one else saw him leave, and some fan observations about his breath visibility compared to MacReady's. However, production notes indicate the breath difference was likely due to lighting and temperature conditions rather than a deliberate clue. The bottle sharing moment creates tension because the thing might drink without raising suspicion, or might refuse to drink revealing itself, or might not matter because sharing drinks proves nothing about infection status. Carpenter has explained that the ending was designed to embody paranoia and mistrust, two survivors unable to trust each other after everything they've seen. He has also acknowledged he knows who's human, but refuses to reveal it, believing that certainty would destroy the film's lingering unease. The horror isn't about which man is the monster, but about the impossibility of trust after what they've experienced. If this was worth your time, consider subscribing so you don't miss future uploads. Thanks for watching.